We've talked a lot about this topic, about how the pandemic changed the way we think about our careers. Some of us added jobs, some of us left jobs, some of us just reimagined our jobs. There is, however, one through line that became patently evident. The way we are treated at work and treat others was up for review. A study from MIT this fall found that 1 in 9 U.S. workers, which translates to roughly 30 million people, think their workplace is toxic. Let that sink in for a second. So how do we handle a toxic workplace? What does it even mean? Joining us this morning is Natasha Bowman. She is a workplace expert, TEDx speaker, and author. Her latest book is called Crazy AF, which for this purpose means crazy and fearless. How to go from being burned out, unhappy, and unmotivated to reclaiming your mental health at work. Natasha, it is such a great pleasure to meet you in the flesh. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
There was a lot that we just threw out there.
Yes.
And I talked about the pandemic, but I suspect that this was brewing way before the pandemic. We just didn't have a name for it.
Exactly. I've been an HR professional for many, many years. And, you know, these terms that are coming up, quiet quitting, the great resignation, I'm like, oh, they're just recoining things that we've been witnessing for a very long time.
That probably our parents were witnessing.
Exactly. They were witnessing, but they didn't take action. And that's what we're seeing now, is people are not being tolerant of certain workplace behaviors to protect their mental health.
That's right. So can we just, for the purpose of this conversation, what do we mean when we say toxic workplace?
Yes, and you know that we say that and you hear it, you know, like almost a buzzword. Yeah. But there's a difference, you know, between toxic workplace where I'm just stressed or burned out. You know, so a toxic workplace is one you walk in and, you know, it's Sunday night, you have the Sunday night blues because you fear.
Yeah,
you
the Sunday scaries.
Yes. You fear your manager and how what their mood is, how they're going to respond. You fear some of your coworkers who may be microaggressive you. You fear, you know, for your job security. As we know, there have been hundreds of thousands of layoffs over the past several months, and your workplace is not communicating that to you, or you're being laid off via Zoom, or you're reading about it in the news. That's all toxic behavior, and it's really embedding just a lot of fear in people about what's next. And it's taking the focus off of what you're actually doing when you get to work. You know, whether your brain is really focused on what's going to happen to me.
So instead of doing the job. Instead of doing the calling. Instead of doing the task that your manager is asking you to fulfill, you're so mired in, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get fired. Oh my gosh, if I say something, it's gonna be wrong. Oh my gosh, there's HR walking down the hallway, I'm next.
Exactly. So that's toxic.
So so, and that starts to affect our mental health.
It does. It starts to, you know, have extreme stress, that burnout, because you feel like, oh, you know what, I gotta go the extra mile. I gotta prove my worth. So you end up stressing yourself out, you know, and it really impacts your mental health, that worry, that fear, you know, and so that also can manifest into physical symptoms, you know. So at the end of the day, you end up putting, what I like to say, your wealth, your paycheck before your health, which I don't advise doing. If you find yourself in that situation where you're in this constant worry, constant fear, it's going to catch up with you after a while. That gives you a sign, an indicator, perhaps this is not the workplace for you.
That's right. So how do we then, Natasha, delineate between this is toxic versus this is my team or the people who are responsible for my output giving me critical information that I need? Because there can be a really fine line.
Absolutely, and I actually talk about it in my book. You know, before you decide to, you know, form an exit strategy or something like that, really do a self-reflection and think about, is it the behaviors or the actual job, or am I not fulfilling my purpose and my passion? A lot of times we feed into careers that we think, you know, maybe we are legacy in a certain career, or it's an expectation. Oh, I have to be a doctor, I have to be a lawyer, those type things. So really do a reflection of, is it my work environment and culture, or is it that I'm no longer being fulfilled by this certain job? Right? And do that reflection. Ask others around you. You know, how do you feel about the culture? How do you see me performing? Am I a good teammate? You know, a lot of times we have such negative behaviors, and it starts to manifest, and it manifests others. So we need to make sure that we're not the toxic ones after a while.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, because, you know, it is, I think some of us fall into the trap of, you get into the office gossip. It's hard not to.
Yeah.
Because there's so little light, and who doesn't want to chuckle?
Right.
Or who doesn't want to forget for a second about the mountain of emails
Exactly.
that I need to tackle?
Yes.
So what advice do you have for our viewers about, you know, engaging with your peers, engaging with your teammates? Because listen, so many of us spend more time with our friends at work or our teammates than we do at home.
Yes.
So how do we strike that balance where it doesn't become toxic?
Yes, well, that interpersonal relationship is so crucial, and a lot of people miss that. You know, when we were working completely remote in certain areas, they miss that interpersonal connection. Essentially, your work almost becomes your family. You know, you have babies together, you get married, you do all these things. However, if your coworkers, if their behaviors are starting to impact your ability to perform your job, you are not meeting your task, you're not meeting your responsibilities because of these distractions, if you will, by your colleagues, that's when you know you're crossing that line. That's when you know that this team is not necessarily feeding to teamwork, right? But they're distraction and disturbance, and that can become toxic after a while as well. And if they also are just very negative all the time, right? We can gossip, we can have little
But when you're
innuendos.
negative Sally all the time, sorry to all the Sallys out there. Real quick before we go, what should your exit strategy be? Should you decide, you know what, this isn't for me anymore?
So after you see the signs, whether it's coming from your workplace or you've decided this no longer is fulfilling me, couple of things. LinkedIn is your absolute tool for finding your new job. Make sure your profile is up to date. Connect with recruiters at organizations that you're interested in joining. Interact with them on their posts, therefore they know who you are when you apply for that position. Another thing you can do, start a side hustle. You know, if there's a different passion or purpose you want to fulfill, you can do that while you're working full time. That's how I started my business.
Look at you, and now you have a book and myriad books and TED Talks and all this stuff.
So you never know where that side hustle is going to take you. And then more importantly, just prepare yourself emotionally and mentally for an exit,
see what that looks
because
like.
that exit can become sooner than what you expect, right? So you want to prepare yourself mentally.
Natasha
for
Bowman,
it.
thank you so much. You are a wealth of knowledge. Please come back and visit us again.
I'd love to. Thank you so much.